Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Juno New Origins, where we are currently located over the planet Sergia, and we're going to go in for a landing on this. The main question is, how much fuel do we have? A lot is the answer. Okay, so I definitely want to be other way around. I want to be going like this. I did this in the reverse order. There we go. Yeah, like that. So we're going to need to bring this guy on down. And we're going to need to jettison these engines eventually. So let's take a look at where we are here in our orbit. Well, we definitely need to plan a burn at the periapsis and circularize this up. So we're targeting about 350 kilometers. For some reason, I thought we were already in a circularized orbit. But there we go, 350. And we know that we're going to have a pretty high atmosphere. We're going to dip in pretty gently, I suspect. So let's go ahead and run this. This is going to be an 11-minute burn time. Oh my. Okay, well, we're definitely going to want to run this on 2x then. 2x is the fastest speed that we can. And looking at our fuel here. Oh, right. I forgot about this little tank here. We should be working on filling this tank. There we go. Excellent. We want to locate this fuel as low as possible. There we go. So that's fine. We're on 2x speed here. This is going to be a very long burn, but we can take another pass at it if we need to. I don't think we'll need to. To be honest, I think we're fine here. This is already our second pass on this. And I think it's looking okay. But we do need to slow down pretty substantially. We can see here our surface velocity is about 3 kilometers per second. So I think that means, well, that definitely indicates that the surface gravity will be slightly higher than on Drew, I believe, because it's a 350 kilometer orbit. The atmosphere is definitely going to be denser. And the question is, will we survive this landing attempt? I suspect the answer to that is yes. But we're going to want to burn off a fair amount of this Delta V here. So we're going to be pulling the fuel out of here. We're currently down to about 40% fuel in our nose cone. So that's understood. We're going to be reducing our amount of overall fuel. And this will, of course, reduce our craft mass. You can see our current craft mass is 5.32 tons. So that is absolutely understood. And we know that the atmospheric height is like 325 kilometers, something along those lines. So we definitely want to drop this on down, but we don't want to go below that number. I think it was like 323. We targeted 350 because it was a fair amount above the atmosphere, but we would still be able to drop this with a relatively low DP burn. So that looks reasonably fine for now. We're about 40% of the way through this burn. It's going to be a long one, no doubt about that. And we're at about 19%, now 18% fuel remaining in our nose cone. So that's looking great. We're definitely reducing our craft mass, which is going to be a very helpful thing as we go for aero brakes. So my questions now are mostly one of heating. We know that we have a heat shield underneath this, right? There's a heat shield right here. But if the legs are extended, do they have different heating characteristics from when they're not extended? Because currently, our leg extension is part of this next stage. So it will by default extend our legs when we stage and ditch these engines. So that's good to know. Okay, so this is now full, or rather empty of fuel. So I want to switch this guy over to draining. There we go. And we're now draining from this center tank. So you can see here, we're down to 4.85 tons of craft mass, and that's good. Every little bit of craft mass we can get rid of at this point is going to be good for us, because that means that it'll take less energy for the atmosphere to slow us down. So that's looking solid. It's still showing medium accuracy, but we don't need this to be an incredibly high accuracy burn. We're also showing that our current apoapsis is like 346. I'm not surprised that that's going to be a little bit off. This is fine. This is very, very okay. We are about 75% of the way through this burn now, so that's looking reasonably solid. We've managed to drain off a fair amount of our fuel, but I mean, this is the bulk of our fuel right here. You can also see this is a big chunk of the craft's mass. In fact, this tank's fuel alone is fully half of the craft's mass. So that's definitely something to consider. Current altitude is 346.2. We are going up at this time, so that is also definitely noted. We can see our apoapsis right now dropping on down nicely. So overall, I think we're in a pretty decent space here. The main issue is going to be, well, fuel mass. And we're going to need to ditch these engines at a certain point. We're also going to need to close our solar panels. I don't believe that these are electrically, wow, I can't speak apparently. Electrically fed? No, they're using 0 watts. So power shouldn't be a big concern. That looks good. Okay, we've got about 8 seconds of burn time left here. Let's finish this off and see just how medium our accuracy was. Okay, so 340 kilometers. We can do another small braking burn here to circularize that back up. Just like that. I don't think 340 will be in atmosphere, but we'll keep an eye on that. For the moment, I'm going to retract the solar panels just in case. And we'll find out. So let's go ahead and warp on over. Watching this air density. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was like 320 some. Okay, so let's slow this on down. It's going to be a very minor burn here. Okay, there we go. Now, in terms of our inclination, you can see the vast majority of our orbit is on this side of the Terminator. And that's very good. In fact, even on the periapsis side over here, this is very close to being at the Terminator. In fact, I would argue that that is on this side of the Terminator. This has an extreme amount of sun exposure. Considering the size of the sun in the sky. Remarkable. Well, I think we're going to bring this around to the periapsis here, and we're going to look to drop this speed down. And maybe just have it be at like 250 kilometers. We'll see how that feels. I'm going to make a save here just in case that's horrific, and for the sake of time, we want to come back to here. I'm not convinced that that will be horrific. This is only going to be 42.8 meters per second as well. So let's go ahead and burn here, and you can see we're right on that Terminator, as expected. Okay, let's burn off a little bit of this fuel. There we go. And we should be done with this burn very shortly here. Okay. So there we go. I want to be in orbital mode here, and I'm going to pin us to orbital retrograde here. As soon as we see the air density start to come up, we're going to want to do something about this. And the something that we're going to want to do is burn as much as we can. So let's go ahead and warp a bit here. So we're on 10x right now. I think it'll drop us out of warp automatically when we get in the atmosphere at 10x. Let's go up a little bit more. This is 25x. And we're not expecting to be in the atmosphere at this point. Okay. Any moment now. Okay, it just pulled us out. We must be in the atmosphere at this point. I'm going to commence a burn here. And we're just looking to slow down as much as we possibly can. The overall idea here is that we want to burn off as much horizontal velocity as we can and reduce our mass as much as possible. We also want to make sure this fuel tank is completely full when we jettison it, ideally. If we have to jettison any fuel, or rather, if we have any leftover fuel, we would prefer this tank have as much of it as possible. We want to drop our mass, right? So that'll be absolutely fine. Now you can see here, we're definitely dropping our apoapsis here. That's understood. And we're going to, yeah, thrust to weight is very low. We're not going to make a powered landing here, that's for sure. We're just going to try to burn off as much of this fuel as we can. Getting under 4 tons would be great, and I think that's definitely going to happen. This air density is still quite low at this altitude. So that's good. And we're just going to bleed off as much of this speed as we can. The air is very, very thick, and we're not going to want to hit this going very fast. The air will be more than enough to slow us down as long as we don't explode on the way. That's the concern right now. So let's get as much of this lateral velocity gone as we can, and we'll try to burn off some of this, but we're probably going to jettison this as soon as we start seeing significant overexpansion damage, which will happen before we run out of fuel, almost certainly. But let's continue to drop this speed down for the moment. And I'm looking right now at this air density. Yeah, you can see we've just hit our first 100th of a gram per meter cubed on air density. So that's understood. We have managed to shed some mass here. We're down to 3.92 tons, and that's good. But let's just bring this right on in. We're starting to see that drag force going up. And we're in plenty of light, in theory. And we're heading towards more light, so that should be reasonably fine. Down to 60% fuel, we've got so much fuel. Arguably too much fuel. But the more mass we can expel at this point, the better off we'll be, lower down. Okay, so our periapsis is definitely impact. That's understood. And we're going to continue to drop down our surface velocity. Our thrust to weight is up to 0.4. That has increased, which is interesting. And that's because this air density is not going up very quickly. This is quite a exponential curve to this air density, it seems. Not particularly linear. That's good to know. That means that we're going to have a pretty long burn time in this upper atmosphere. That's a good thing. That is a good thing. We're seeing the air pressure creeping up over here, though. This is at almost 5 pascals at this point. Cool. That means that our thrust to weight will be starting to go down. And like I said, we're mostly watching at this point for running into significant amounts of overexpansion. Although at this time, we don't have a significant issue. And we can see that that ambient temperature, that's coming up. Keep in mind, this is negative. It's kind of hard to see. But negative 160 C is the current ambient temperature. It's going to get a lot hotter than that. The current temperature on our engines is 18.9 C. Yeah, that's going to continue to go up. We're going to need to get to the heat shields eventually, but we have managed to burn off half of the fuel in our tank here. That's a good sign. I did not want to change our heading there. Stay on velocity retrograde. Thank you very much. Okay, so everything is looking decent here for now. That air density continuing to rise. Our craft mass is down to about 3.5 tons at this point. So we've managed to get rid of a significant amount of our propellant. That's good. And keep in mind there's going to be another roughly 200 kilograms, 178 total kilograms in this fuel tank that's going to be expelled. We're probably not going to burn that. And we're probably not going to burn this whole amount. We want to burn as much as we can out of this for right now. So we are down below 2 kilometers per second. So far, so good. And we're still seeing our thrust to weight ratio increase. Now, this is never going to beat gravity. Ever, 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 ever. That's okay. We don't need it to. We're going to be coming down on our chutes, which we know should be safe here because we already did it on Ord. Is that the name? Ord? Ord, yes. We already came down on Ord and was completely safe on the chutes, and this should be a way thicker atmosphere than Ord. So that's absolutely wonderful. We're down to about 40% fuel remaining in our primary fuel tank, And we're still holding at 0.41 thrust to weight. I'm definitely noticing that our plume expansion is decreasing. That's understood. We're just trying to do as much re-entry burn as we can for right now and just toss that propellant overboard. We want to hit this atmosphere. I mean, we're already in the atmosphere, but we want to swim through the atmosphere as slowly as possible at this time. And keep in mind, our chutes aren't safe until 1 kilometer per second or slower, so that's definitely something to think about. We're already down to under 1850 though, and we're still really, really high up. So I think ultimately this is very safe looking, but look at that. Those plumes definitely losing expansion. We're going to get over expansion damage quite soon here. That's understood. We are down to 35% at this time. So we've managed to burn off a large chunk of this fuel. That's looking good. But that air density is really starting to come up now. You can see we've shaved off a lot of our lateral velocity, but we're building up vertical velocity, which is completely understood. And expected. Okay, heat is definitely starting to build up here. No doubt about that. Temperature on the engine out here is building up a lot as well. Okay. Fuel tank is taking heat damage. I'm jettisoning. I'm also going to not extend these landing legs just yet. So at this point, we're just having drag, right? And our heat shield, this is currently protecting the rest of our craft. Hopefully, the piston legs aren't going to be a problem. If they are, there are some things that we can think about. But the reason why I jettisoned this, and it's unfortunate that we're not having better drag than this because these are clipped in. I wonder what'll happen if this explodes. Will that take the whole craft with it? Because when we released... Oh, no, that's not happening. Okay. When we released this, it just clipped in, so that means that this actually has more drag than we do, which is a little strange considering the heat shield. Okay, something just happened there. Specifically, that was that fuel tank going. That's relatively okay. So we can see the temperature on the piston legs is currently equalizing, maybe dropping a little bit. We see that they did build up some damage there, but it's not a lot. Yes, this damage is beginning, or rather the temperature is beginning to go down. And that's happening because we are decelerating significantly. Okay, we completed some Sergia distance flying. Hilarious. We need to be under 1 kilometer per second in order to be able to safely deploy our chutes. Obviously, we're going to achieve that. This is very, very clear at this point. Yeah, we're going to continue getting this. This is going to be a lot of tech points. I love it. So we're really high up still. If we deployed the chutes now, we would be drifting for so long. A truly ridiculous length of time. Let's let this continue to fall, and I'm wondering what our terminal velocity is. To be honest, I feel like we should be on 2x. We're seeing temperatures dropping across the board. Things are looking very safe at this point. So let's take this up to 2x and see how it goes. Terminal velocity is clearly quite low here. But this is exactly what we wanted to achieve with that long entry burn. This is it. This is it right here. This is 100% what we wanted. So our lateral velocity is going to be gone very, very shortly here, and we're still working on the vertical velocity, but that's decreasing as well. We can see our surface velocity is down to about 300 meters per second. No chutes out right now. Keep that in mind. The drag that we're receiving from the heat shield plus the pistons is basically enough. I'm not sure why we just tumbled. Oh, that's interesting. This isn't a problem necessarily because we don't need to angle the heat shield anymore, but we're definitely having a hard time angling back up to retrograde. I'm watching our battery. Our battery is fine. Our chutes will pull us back to retrograde, so I'm not concerned about that. This is fine, but the aerodynamic model is a bit strange that it wants to sit here. I'm going to unlock velocity retrograde right now. Yeah, it wants to flip around to prograde. But we're still decreasing our surface velocity. That seems okay. So we're going to pull this back up towards retrograde shortly before we deploy the chutes, and that's going to give us more drag. But we're already moving so slowly. I'm going to go ahead and deploy our piston legs at this time, because I feel like they're absolutely fine. There we go. And we're just coasting on down. We've still got another 70 kilometers to go. It's kind of insane how slowly we're moving right now. Definitely do not want to deploy chutes at this time. We're going to keep coasting on downward. So we built up a little bit of lateral velocity at this point. That's fine. I'm not too concerned about that. That will continue to go down, especially once the chutes get deployed. And that vertical velocity still decreasing. We've not yet hit terminal velocity. We're still slowing down. Terminal velocity is probably going to be below 100 meters per second, because we're still up there. 58 kilometers at this point. We have a long ways to fall. And this is still with 32% fuel in this tank. Almost a ton, 836 kilograms. I'm going to turn this off. There's no point in having that there. Unless we wanted to move weight into this hemisphere to have the mass be located closer to the top, but I don't think there's a reason to do that. We would like our mass to be bottom heavy, not top heavy. So that seems fine. We're currently still over 50 kilometers up, and we're crossing that 100 meter per second threshold right now. So this is some insane, insane atmosphere. Of course, we expect that with a Venus analog, right? That was 100% anticipated. So that's looking good. Our lateral velocity is under 2 meters per second. I'm comfortable with that. Our vertical velocity continuing to decrease, 92 meters per second. 45 more kilometers to drop. Well, this is a lot more stable than coming in on Eve, that's for sure. Ooh, what is this? Is this lava? I don't know what that is. That could very well be molten. I mean, the ambient temperature here is 391 degrees Celsius, right? So it's hot. This is definitely hot. Wonder what the max temperature on drogue chutes is. I don't know, but it's definitely speedy. So we're falling through this incredibly thick, incredibly warm atmosphere at about 77 meters per second at this time. We're still 38 kilometers up. We've got a long ways to fall yet. I'm going to start deploying these chutes at probably like 3 or 5 kilometers. It's not going to be very high, but it's going to be high enough to be very safe. But we need to continue to fall at maximum velocity right now because I'm pretty concerned about getting this thing down to the ground in a reasonable time frame. This atmosphere is just so thick, it's almost buoyant. The gas giant's going to be real interesting, isn't it? I said almost buoyant, to be clear. It's not buoyant. We're not experiencing any buoyancy, but man, it almost feels like by the time we get down to the bottom, we're going to be moving at like 10 meters per second. Do we even need a parachute? I mean, in order to turn ourselves back around, we're apparently not as aerodynamically stable as I'd like to be, but in order to turn ourselves back around, sure, we could use a parachute, but in order to slow ourselves down, honestly, I'm not convinced that a parachute is necessary here. That'll certainly be interesting to find out. We've got another 25 kilometers to fall, and we're falling at 60 meters per second, of course in x2 time. So this is definitely still proceeding to fall, and we're still too fast at this point. If we were to land at this speed, we would crash. That would explode. That would not be a landing. But honestly, we're still decelerating a lot. We're down to 56 meters per second. That lateral velocity is at like point... Well, it's oscillating a bit. The lateral velocity is irrelevant at this point, though. So that looks excellent. That air density continuing to increase. And our craft mass is not going to decrease anymore, of course. Okay, so we're currently down to about 19 kilometers from the surface and traveling at about 52 meters per second. So everything is looking decent here. We're moving so slowly, though. It's insane. This is another one of those moments where I wish that Juno had the ability to go up to 4x physics warp. That would be convenient. Alas, 2x is the best we can do in this game. So definitely lesson learned that this is a very, very different approach profile than on Eve. No doubt about that. The main issue with Eve is hitting the atmosphere slowly enough to not just instantly explode when you collide with it. It's like almost a solid entity on Eve. But that's very different from this, for sure. This is a much more friendly atmosphere. Not necessarily a friendly surface, but friendly atmosphere. So we're down to about 13 kilometers from the surface at this point, and where exactly are we located? Okay, so I'm seeing how far away from the Terminator we are, and then seeing how long the shadows are here. Yeah, so this is probably due to just how exposed Cerkia is. In reality, we'd rather be landing like out over here, but maybe landing here isn't bad because this would probably be a lot hotter landing closer over that way. So that's definitely interesting. We are currently about 10 kilometers from the surface, still decelerating. We're at 43.5 meters per second right now. But at least we're down under 10 kilometers. So I think I'm going to let this drop till about 3, and then we're going to get the chutes out. We'll see how much that slows us down. It's probably going to be way too much. But overall, this is looking really, really good. Much friendlier surface to land on. Much friendlier. We lost our solar panels at some point. I didn't even notice that. It's not relevant, but we lost them at some point. Interesting. Even with them stowed. Well, I guess that's fine. They might have gone when the engines did, because I did see that 3 parts had exploded. One could have been the fuel tank that was taking heat damage, and then the other 2 could have been the solar panels, all simultaneously. So we're currently down to about 4.5 kilometers of altitude, and traveling at 39 meters per second. Okay. I'm going to flip us towards velocity retrograde. We're not going to be able to flip all the way there. But what this is going to do is this is going to give us more surface area exposed. And we're 3 kilometers up right now. I'm actually going to wait until maybe like 2 kilometers. 2.5? Okay, I'm putting out the chutes now. What? Okay. Drogue chute broke off because it went under too much stress. Each one of these is slowing us down some. There we go. Wait. Hang on. There. That's enough. That was really weird. But sure. Too much stress at like 25 meters per second. That's kind of nuts. But we got there in the end. Had to game it with the repack, but sure. That'll do the trick. Well, that's one way to do things, I suppose. Not a great way to do things, but Sure, it'll do. I mean, as far as a first attempt at landing goes, I'm going to call that a pretty decent one. We're coming down at 3 meters per second, which should be very, very safe. And the reason that worked was because each time we repacked and fired that chute, it broke, but it took off a little bit of our speed. So we were very, very easily able to do that. We could just repack it, do it again, and eventually it got to the point where the chutes were no longer breaking under the stress. I definitely would not have expected the chutes to be breaking. Sergia highest climb, huh? Okay. I definitely wouldn't have expected the chutes to be breaking at that speed. Like, that was so slow. I guess that's a drogue chute versus main chute thing. But okay, there's that mission completed. We can at this point end the flight and destroy the craft. We don't want to do anything else here. There's nothing else for us to do. I do want to check. Apparently 1% of players have landed on Sergia. So 10 times as many have landed on Sergia as landed on Ord. Interesting. Well, it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're probably going to spend some of these tech points and then head out over to, what's the name of it? Like Volco or something like that? The Mercury analog. We'll get that done next episode. Well, we'll get that started next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Andy McGard, Dark Horse, Xenocyte, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.